I'm Robin Gagnon.
And I'm Eric Gagnon, and we sell restaurants. We started the nation's largest restaurant brokerage firm. We sell restaurants over a decade ago. You can find us online at WeSellRestaurants.com.
We are on your radio once a week with leaders in the restaurant business, talking about subjects trending in the industry. Tweet your own questions on the topic while we are on the air to our Twitter handle, Sell Restaurants, or post them on our Facebook page, facebook.com/WeSellRestaurants. If we don't get to your question, we'll definitely follow up on social media.
Our goal is to satisfy your appetite for acquisition, feed the need for restaurant reality, and serve up a recipe for business success. If you have ideas for our show or comments, email me. My email address is Eric, E-R-I-C, at WeSellRestaurants.com. Today's topic is Restaurant Regulation Nation.
We are joined by 3 industry experts here today to talk about the burden of regulation on the industry. Is your restaurant being slowly suffocated under the burden of excessive regulation? Our leaders present on today's call will provide insight, tips, and their own experiences to help our listeners streamline demands to comply as a restaurant operator. First on our panel is Melvin N. Kramer. Dr. Kramer is a PhD and MPH and the founder of EHA Consulting Group. He has over 30 years professional experience as a consultant in all aspects of the food industry. Prior to starting EHA Consulting Group in 1980, he held positions in both state and local health departments. He has consulted widely with cruise lines, educational institutions, food processors, manufacturers, importers, exporters, and served as an expert witness in matters related to infectious disease and environmental and public health matters concerning food safety. He has also spoken with educational facilities and regulations enforced by, among other agencies, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the Food and Drug Administration. In addition, he was a panelist in rewriting the Vessel Sanitation Inspection Program for the cruise ship industry on behalf of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Dr. Kramer holds a master's degree in public health with a concentration in environmental health and epidemiology. Dr. Kramer, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Good morning.
Good. We also joined this morning by Paul Mangiamele. Paul is veteran restaurant and retailing executive who joined Bennigan Franchising Company as a president and CEO in 2011. Under his high-energy leadership, Bennigan has embarked on several game-changing initiatives aimed at revolutionizing the casual dining category. The brand's legendary comeback is chronicled in Mangiamele's book, Bennigan's Return to Relevance, published in April of 2013. His background includes operations, marketing, franchise development, brokerage, and distributor networks, as well as building and leading teams from startup, growth, and Fortune 500 environments. During his 30-year career, Mangiamele has served as president and CEO of Salsarita's Fresh Cantina, president and CEO of Dalt's Classic American Grill, vice president of business development for Carlson's Companies, and he also was executive president and CEO at Sports Clips. His experience on the franchise side includes building multiple units of Chicago grills in the Midwest. Mangiamele is a frequent guest in local and national television programs and is in high demand as a business speaker and turnaround expert. Paul, thank you for joining us this morning.
It's my pleasure.
And last but certainly not least, here to give a different perspective in his role as a food safety instructor is Mr. Corey Douglas. Corey has almost 15 years of experience in the hospitality industry. He decided to start a training center with the goal of providing safer food and better service for the industry. Corey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We have a very diverse panel today. We're going to look at our regulation nation from the consulting side, the training perspective, and also as from a franchise CEO who's ultimately responsible for complying with all the regulation. So, Paul, let's kick this off with you. As the CEO and president of a 35-year-old American franchise brand with operators spread across 11 states, how does a restaurant chain like Bennigan stay up to date on what seems like a never-ending food safety compliance regulation maze?
Well, it starts with an excellent team in the corporate office that we have in Dallas, and then it's extended by the correct profiling and selection of outstanding franchisees that we're lucky enough to have as part of Bennigan. So it's a tenacious group. It's a smart group. It's one that has embraced the different requirements to do business today. It's as we're going to talk about later on, it's very hard as it is to fight and compete for market share, let alone some of the mandates that have come down from our administration. But it starts with that, and then it is sustained by communication and engagement. So I can talk for about an hour, so I'll just say that for now, and so we can have everybody be able to participate.
Well, Dr. Kramer, that's interesting because he actually started off talking about employees. And when we worked with you to brief for the show, you actually submitted the question, what are some techniques that would be useful in ensuring and reinforcing employee food safety? So give us some feedback from that perspective.
Well, the first piece of food safety begins with an interview. And people very often don't look at the interview as a food safety event, but it is. Someone comes to an interview and they're unhygienic, long nails, dirty fingernails. We don't like to discriminate, but if they have really red, pussy acne, these people are not really suitable to work in a food service environment for food safety. Then it goes, once they are hired, it goes into the culture, not only for regulatory compliance, but your own ops manuals. And how do you integrate your operational manual and your training to the specific employee, the category of employee, their job task? And then, as in everything, you have to give positive reinforcement, correction when necessary, and you have to live sanitation every day. That means management, supervisors, have to reinforce. It's not do as I do, don't do as I say, do as I do. It's one of these things that they absolutely have to do it on a daily basis.
Good. Thank you so much, Doctor. And Corey, Doctor just talked about implementing some sort of process and policies and procedures and that. And a lot of our listeners are curious about that. But what are some of the costs that would be associated with implementing a safe food handling versus not implementing them at all?
Well, I will give a perfect example. Perfect example would be sanitizer. A lot of restaurants feel that, I'll just use soap and water, and they don't take the time to properly purchase sanitizer. Monthly cost for sanitizer is about $500 for just to start, and gloves $100 a month just to start. But at the same time, if someone was to have, we'll say, salmonella from your establishment, that's $5,000 per person. So
wow.
If you just we'll say, served 50 people, that's $250,000 in expenses due to salmonella. All you had to do was spend a little $600, and then you would have been able to prevent that, along with proper cooking. And then, as he said, sanitizing is probably the most important thing that needs to get done in a restaurant, because that is what also will be able to prevent you from having the health department spending weeks at your establishment while it's still open before they shut you down.
Hey, Paul, let me ask you this. Have you seen a large increase in regulations over the past, let's call it 5 years? And if so, are more regulations in place hindering Bennigan's ability to expand domestically or overseas?
Well, that question can be broken down into several parts. One, yes, there's increasing regulations across the board for anybody that retails, and in the restaurant space, as you already heard from our other guests, it gets more and more difficult. But it gets all the way down to the realization that I think the common thread is it's all about people. So I was mentioning my team, I was mentioning the franchisees, but it also gets down to what we call internal guests, which are our employees. And the training piece, I completely agree with what was said already. It's training, and you cannot ever coast on the training piece. It's about not just training the first time, but it's reinforcing it every day. And that collective knowledge from store to store, from brand to brand, is what makes brands either relevant or become victims of what we call brand drift, which get away from the original components that made brands successful in the first place. So, I see more regulations, but it does not hamper the growth of what I call a legacy brand, an iconic brand, where people still love to go out and eat. They still love to get great portions and food, and they still like to get great service. And so, and again, a lot of that is from, what we call internally separating the Eagles from the other folks that would come into an operation. So that we affectionately call turkeys. So the Eagles are the people that soar, that get it, that work as a team, that communicate, and that actually stand for something that represents the brand integrity. And again, I'm not speaking just about Bennigan's, but I'm talking about any retailer where when you have a team that is passionate, and that's a word that's underused in our business, and believes and can embrace the cultural platforms that the brand has, then not only do you become relevant, but you become a leader in the segment. But no, in terms of our growth, I mean, it's interesting. We started, Bennigan's first restaurant was in Atlanta, and we certainly like to get back to Atlanta at some point. And we're just going to open up in Panama City, as a matter of fact, just a little south of you guys in a couple of weeks, and it'd be the first new restaurant in Florida in quite some time. But we're also building around the world. We're in 10 countries as well. So there's never been a cessation of the demand for a solid American brand. So we see growth from Asia to the Central America, to Mexico, to the Middle East, and we just opened up another restaurant in Cyprus, where there's just a financial crisis, unlike anything that's ever been seen by the Cypriots, and here they are, our franchisees out there opening a brand new restaurant. So no,
that's great. That is great development for you guys, and we definitely are excited to see your brand, and hopefully we'll sit back soon here in Atlanta. Dr. Kramer, we talk about education and everything. What are some of the techniques that will be used in ensuring and reinforcing employees' food safety on an ongoing basis?
Before I answer that question, I'd like to jump in about the salmonella. I'm not sure where the figure $5,000 possibly might be an average of the cost of payout to a quote-unquote victim of salmonella. However, that's on the low side. They can go into the millions of dollars where you may have inadequate insurance, and that's another really important thing. I've been involved in outbreaks. People get what I call GI salmonella, which usually is self-limiting, and a healthy individual isn't that terrible. Of course, when you don't have it, it's not that terrible. But in terms of other conditions, you can have reactive arthritis from it. It can cross into the bloodstream. And a matter of fact, I had one case with a 33-year-old physician who needed 2 hip replacements because it got into his hip. So don't let anyone think that $5,000 per salmonella case is the end of it. It may be the low-end average of when a restaurant might have it. However, recovery from such an outbreak in terms of getting your brand back up, getting the public relations out there, dealing with the litigation that is sure to occur, dealing with the insurance premiums that will go up, and getting those customers back to say this was, it was an event, and we've basically learned our lesson. Those amounts are not only incalculable, but sometimes they're not measurable.
I totally agree with you, Dr. Kramer, because once that brand damage is done, you really cannot put a figure on what that is and what it costs you to rebuild it with the public.
Absolutely not. And I've done this with chain restaurants where one in a region would have it, and it takes down not only that unit, but it also has a ripple effect throughout the chain. And chains spend so much money on advertising and promotion and goodwill and sponsoring the Little League and just getting into the community. This can tear so much of it down. So adhering to the sanitary code is a minimum. Training, reinforcement, supervision, whether it's getting the best pest control operator, but validate them. Getting the sanitizer, and it doesn't have to, be the most expensive, but it does have to work. It does have to be easily verifiable. Do you have a system where you can chart it? And we're a big believer that every unit should have almost like a mini retail HACCP program where certain things, whether it's temperature, whether it's sanitizer, whether it's refrigerators, all of these things are checked and logged and verified. And, we see all sorts of different things going on in our practice, and we're sometimes called in when there are problems. These problems are easily preventable. And, as I tell people, we're there for you before, during, and after the crisis. Before is always cheaper. And I hate to tell you that prevention is a much harder sell than, oh, my gosh, when can you be here? We're having these issues.
But I
it
think
doesn't only have to be microbiological. Allergens are a very big issue these days, as well as we can have some chemical issues as well as physical issues. What happens when someone breaks a glass? Do we stop, drop, and start throwing things out? Or do we just clean up the glass and hope it didn't fly into someone's food?
Dr. Kramer, as a restaurant broker, we agree with you 100% that it is too late sometimes. We see a lot of people contact us as, I need to sell my restaurant, I need to get out of this, but it's too late. They could have fixed it earlier. So we see that. Robin,
but let's don't talk about just the negative side of things, because the flip side of the coin is that when someone has a food service operation that is devoted to excellence, that they have staffing and processes and procedures that are going down a path that says we're going to deliver on excellence at every element, then, it's like that rising tide brings all boats. Everything about that business is excellent, including the level of cleanliness and food safety. And personally, I think customers feel that. I think they get that vibe when they walk in the door, and that gives them the reason to return. Would you agree, Paul?
Oh, that is so absolutely true. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's about the you hear about these outbreaks and this and that. And then you hear about different retailers, going back to the basics. Well, I agree with my other panelists that you never should get away from the basics. I don't know why you need to come back to them, because that food safety, that is, restaurant 101. That you teach that first, and you continue to teach it. And again, I think that the ongoing training that's now available through online training, so that you can bring the restaurant training program into the store itself, and continually not only train all your internal guests, but you continue to reinforce the basic precepts that make you a restaurant in the first place, whether it's front of the house or back of the house, or food safety. Or even, because we have a full service and full bar, even how to serve a customer from a standpoint of not letting the guest over imbibe.
Right.
And when to flag that customer and call him a cab and make sure he gets home safely. So yeah, there's a million things that you need to juggle in order to make it all right. But you said the magic word. It's about a vibe. It's about the energy. It's about the passion that you should have inside your four walls that delivers an outstanding, what we call legendary experience for any guest.
And food service is one piece of regulatory compliance, but it's every single level. From the time an employee walks in the door, and turns off the alarm, there are alarm regulations where police departments are requiring you to register your alarm, and then they go and they clock in, and automatically hundreds of rules and regulations start raining down on you as an operator in terms of your compliance with all kinds of OSHA rules and payroll rules and overtime rules and pay rules and maybe labor. So, I mean, and then that's all before you even start cooking. So regulation is not just about the food service side, although that's an incredibly important piece of it, but everything you do is being impacted by someone who's saying there's a rule for that. And how do you struggle through all of that as an operator?
Well, again, I think it's, you pay attention to all the details. I mean, you have to look at it multifunctional. One of the things that I did when I came in is to, peel back every single discipline of a business. So from finance to marketing to business development to prototype, every single issue needs to be looked at. And inside the operation, as you were alluding to, I mean, from as simple as how do you make a deposit? Do you have an armored car come up and pick up the deposit, or do you require your managers to go ahead and deposit at the end of the night? How do you take your garbage out? I mean, it gets down to the minutia. But if you set up an operational platform and a cultural platform where you actually do demonstrate care and safety and training and reinforcement of that training, so that the end result is a legendary experience for back of the house, front of the house, and for your customer, then you're halfway home. And you cannot take your eye off the ball for 1 minute. There's never a time where you just say, okay, locked and loaded. It's follow-up every single day. It's reinforcement every single day. It's training every single day. And that collective output of that focus will be an excellent operations. And it's where people lose that focus is where, as it was alluded to earlier, where they have an outbreak of either a foodborne illness, or they have safety concerns inside the restaurant, or they have the temperature concerns with the food that they bring out, and all of that spells disaster.
Hey, Corey, quick question for you. We're going into a hard break in just a few minutes here, or just a minute here, but just a quick question. ServSafe. How many ServSafe certified individuals need to be on staff in a restaurant during the hours that it's open?
That varies by state. Some states require that one person in the operation actually be ServSafe certified. There are some states that may require one person. It's at any given time when the operation is open. And I have seen where there are some states that are requiring, if you have more than a certain number of people that are being served, or more than a certain number of employees on staff, that they're requiring that you have one per that particular cutoff point.
Great.
ServSafe certified people.
Great information. This is Eric and Robin Gagnon. We're the Restaurant Brokers, and our topic this week is Regulation Nation. We're joined by experts who are taking on this topic. This is the first segment, and we will be rejoined by our panel shortly when we return. Don't touch that dial. We Sell Restaurants will return after the break.